In business today, three things to know. First, economy workout. Key numbers point to expansion, including private sector job growth. We'll run down the key data points. Then, immigration dysfunction. Congress, AWOL. The president plans on billions for border enforcement, yet they keep coming. Has big business thrown in the towel on getting immigration reform through? And some are calling him the new Secretary of Defense. How losing on the pitch could still make Tim Howard a big winner in the sponsorship arena thanks to an unstoppable performance in the World Cup. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. A new record high for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, coming close to hitting 17,000 on Wednesday as investors celebrated a private sector jobs report. Trading was very thin, though, on the last full market day before the 4th of July holiday. The better-than-expected ADP report showed that jobs grew by 281,000 in June. The U.S. Labor Department unemployment numbers come out Thursday, a day ahead of schedule due to the 4th of July holiday. Meantime, Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen spoke and cautioned that investors have stepped up their risk-taking.
Monetary policy faces significant limitations as a tool to promote financial stability. Its effects on financial vulnerabilities, such as excessive leverage and maturity transformation, are not well understood.
Okay, I'm going to translate for you. We're not going to make any change in monetary policy. That's what she said. Other than that, she has learned Fed speak. Lips move. And we all think that Janet Yellen said something important. But for the most part, monetary policy is not changing. There does remain some weak spots in the economy, though, that the Fed is watching. May factory orders declined by 0.5%. Analysts expected a 0.3% decline. A drop in military spending there is partially blamed. Now for a look at how the markets closed. As we mentioned, the Dow hitting a record high at 16,976, up just 20.17. The market really not moving much today. And again, volume very light. The S&P 500 closing up just $1.30. That's a record as well to 1974.62. The Nasdaq pulling back just shy of $1 to 44.57.73. Some of the stocks we're watching today. The Federal Trade Commission is suing T-Mobile for allegedly earning hundreds of millions of dollars illegally by placing questionable charges on customers' cell phone bills for texting services. T-Mobile closing down 6 cents. Tyson Foods agreeing on a deal to buy Hillshire Brands for $7.7 billion. This just days after Hillshire officially canceled its own $4.3 billion deal to buy Pinnacle Foods. Tyson closing up $1.09. And GoPro's founder, Nick Woodman, is officially a billionaire. After taking his company public last week, shares were up by more than 60% from the IPO price of $24, but they slid close to 14% today, down to $42.04, as investors took some profit taking. Gold closing at $1326.80 an ounce, and oil closing at $104.24 a barrel, down 110. For a preview of the jobs report tomorrow, we now turn to Doug Handler. He is chief economist with IH Global Insight. Doug, welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Glad to be here, Andrew.
I know that the ADP number is not one that you particularly watch. Tomorrow, we're going to get the one from the U.S. government. And what are you expecting in the jobs arena?
We're expecting about 220,000 new jobs to be created. But the issue that's been going on for a while about the quality of the jobs also is going to continue tomorrow.
And when you say that, what do you mean about the quality of the jobs? Are you looking at these are going to be service sector jobs, part-time jobs, low-paying jobs?
Yes, to all of them. These are jobs where certainly people are going back to work and earning an income. That's a good thing. But part of the economic recovery is predicated on good, high-paying jobs being created as well. And don't expect to see that tomorrow, although we'll be hopeful.
The Labor Department, when they make these numbers, they also put in estimates. Last report, they estimated numbers that were created because of new businesses that were starting up. Are we going to see more of that tomorrow?
The ADP report was fairly optimistic on that, and that's actually one of the strengths of that report. So based on that information, small business is probably going to be a big contributor to that growth.
And when you're talking about sort of the quality of the jobs, and that's something that the Fed is going to look for, as well as wage pressure. But I imagine if these jobs are low-quality jobs, we're still not going to see wage pressure.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why Janet Yellen, I think, is going to be holding her ground here.
Yeah.
We know inflation is still under control. The big question on the labor market is it tight or not here? And so therefore, what are the prospects for wage inflation? We get a lot of good jobs, an argument for tightness coming up in the labor market, but the quality of the jobs, the wages that go along with those jobs, that's not clear at all here. So that'll be something certainly the Fed is watching as well.
And I don't think many Americans would consider this a tight job market. If you have a job, you're keeping it right now. You really aren't having much luck finding other jobs, correct?
That's right. Yeah, job mobility, people changing jobs, has barely budged since the end of the recession, and that is a sign of anxiety still in the marketplace.
What do you think Janet Yellen is getting to when she says that there is additional risk-taking by investors out there? Isn't that a good sign that maybe that investors are getting more confident?
It is a good sign. The risk-taking is good. And one of the messages I think she said today as well is that the Fed's job really is to make sure that any sort of fallout from these risk-taking and other collapse is really handled smoothly by the financial markets. It's not the job really to promote orderly gains here, but just to make sure that markets really don't seize up. So the risk-taking is good, but if there's a bubble in housing or the stock market and the like here, the Fed is really not going to manage that in advance and will let things fall where they may, and hopefully the recovery will be smoother than what we had in 2009.
Okay, Doug Handler, Chief U.S. Economist with IHS Global Insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Businesses are among those watching with glowing alarm the immigration crisis at the border. President Obama says he will now act on his own without congressional authority to step up enforcement at the Mexican border and deport individuals who may pose a national security or other criminal risk. This comes as the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, appears to have ruled out immigration reform for this year. Ari Noorani is Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum and joins us from Washington, D.C. Ari, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So what did the president say yesterday that he plans to do?
Well, the president, first of all, said Speaker Boehner told them last week that the House was going to be unable to move forward. And really, that's just a lost opportunity for Republicans, for Democrats, and frankly, for all of us. So what the president said is that he's asked the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, to move forward with a review of enforcement and administrative relief options. But he also said that he was moving additional resources to the border to stem the tide of unaccompanied minors coming to the country from Central America. So the president really took the matters into his own hands in terms of making sure there are resources on the border to keep our country safe, but also said, you know what, if Congress can't fix the system, I'm going to act within my boundaries to do so.
Ali, do you think that maybe he started a little bit too late here when he's going to send troops or border agents to the border to stop the kids from coming in? What happens when they get there, though? Where are they going to go?
Well, this is the amazing thing. I mean, the only people that are winning right now are the drug cartels. The drug cartels are going throughout Central America and telling families in very desperate situations just outright lies. And they're charging them thousands of dollars and taking those kids from Central America, putting them on top of a train, and taking to the Rio Grande. At the Rio Grande, those cartels just nudge those kids across the border into the arms of Border Patrol. Border Patrol then detains the children, processes them, and then turns them over to Health and Human Services. That's all according to law. Then, at that point, those kids are then determined whether or not they should be deported or do they have asylum or other grounds to remain in the country.
And what's interesting here is that these are not Mexicans, right? They are coming from countries further south, meaning Mexico's borders itself are rather porous on its southern border.
Well, again, I mean, these are cartels. This is organized crime taking advantage of the chaos that our immigration system represents currently. Frankly, if Congress did its job, cartels would not be telling the country what our immigration system can and can't do. The United States government would be saying it. And that's really the problem here.
So have businesses and have we all just given up on the idea of immigration reform for this year? There was a story earlier about the GOP really handing the Democrats a winning issue here, because the Democrats can say that the GOP is blocking immigration reform instead of taking it off the table.
In a place like Washington, D.C., the winners are playing chess. They're thinking through, okay, if this happens, then that happens 3 moves down the line. Sadly, when it comes to immigration reform, everybody's playing checkers. And our economy is going to suffer. Our communities are going to suffer. And, I still think there are options here in 2014 to move legislation forward, but those odds are long. But at some point, members of Congress have got to do their job, and they've got to take responsibility for fixing the system.
And certainly the loss of Eric Cantor, do you think, sets this back a little bit?
Well, Eric Cantor did not lose because of immigration. Eric Cantor lost because he forgot who he represented. We've seen rank-and-file Republicans who've been under the same kind of attack on the issue of immigration reform. They stuck to their principles in terms of being for immigration reform, and they won hands down. So, yes, Eric Cantor's defeat sets us back, but he did not lose because of immigration. He lost because he tried to get cute.
You talk to businesses. What are they telling you about their frustrations in trying to resolve this issue?
Over 400 of the Fortune 500, 1 in 4 Fortune 500 companies have been started by immigrants or children of immigrants. So business is frustrated. They are tired of Washington, D.C. failing to meet their needs. So at the end of the day, the administration is going to have to do what they can in their power, but business cannot afford to give up on immigration reform. They really need Congress to take action.
Okay, Ali Noorani, National Immigration Forum, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much.
Coming up, why some investors swim in so-called dark pools and how it's impacting faith in the stock market. You're watching Rise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back to Rise Exchange. This week, Goldman Sachs was fined for violations relating to dark pools. You may not have heard of dark pools, but they have been around since the early days of stock market trading and recently came to light because of the book Flash Boys, which is about high-frequency trading. While you may not have heard of them, if you have money in the stock market, they are something you may want to know about. To explain what dark pools are and how they work, we welcome back Stefanie Kammerman, founder and managing director of the Stock Whisperer. Stefanie, welcome back to Rise Exchange. The first question is, what is a dark pool?
A dark pool is a network that allows traders to buy and sell stocks, large block orders, without the risk of showing their hands until after they're executed. These trades aren't revealed until after they're done, and they're done on these ATSs. In fact, Barclays, it's an alternative trading system.
It's not a stock. It's not like the New York Stock Exchange.
No, it's outside of the stock exchange. And Barclays has one that's called the Barclays LX, and Goldman Sachs has one called the Sigma X.
Certainly not illegal. But,
no.
But what is the accusation, for example, against Goldman Sachs? What did they do wrong here?
Well, they had price errors back in 2011. That they're finally catching up with it. They were fined $800,000 yesterday on it.
What is the advantage for investors who go into dark pools by not showing their hand of what they're buying or selling?
Well, they can get their order done without moving a stock price, and they can also buy and sell a stock in between the bid and the offer. And, these dark pools, they're not supposed to have high-frequency traders in them. So there's an advantage. But with Barclays, last week, they got sued because they allowed a significant amount of high-frequency traders into their dark pools.
Okay, so what is the profile of the investor then into a dark pool? Would you and I, could we go and invest into a dark pool?
Well, I'm too small. I don't know what kind of an account you have. It's not very easy to get into it. You really have to be a big player in the market. So, and we're talking big player, we're talking individuals, or are we talking institutional investors, or a mix of both? Mostly institutionals.
Okay, so we're talking groups that are moving hundreds of millions of dollars through these dark pools.
Yeah.
What would you like to see then done with dark pools?
Well, what really disturbs me is that there are a lot of late prints. You know, these trades are executed, 10 million shares are done at the top without moving the stock down. The market moves down. We don't know why until the next day we see these huge
So is it
prints.
a full day?
They're delayed.
There is
a lot
full
of times.
day. So it's sort of like, you know, dark matter out there in space, right? You see it pulling on a planet, but you don't know it's really there. Is that kind of what's going on?
Well, it's not fair, because if you saw that Goldman Sachs wanted to sell 10 million shares of IBM and you saw him on the offer, then perhaps you would sell the stock before they had a chance to get it done.
And isn't there a conflict of interest here if Goldman Sachs is moving money through the dark pools? Because Goldman Sachs clearly knows when the trades are coming. And theoretically, I guess they're not allowed to trade on that information, but I don't know. But their clients, who are individual investors possibly, I mean, Goldman Sachs is not necessarily a lot of individual investors, don't know that information.
No, they don't. But we trade off of them. For instance, a lot of times we see these late dark prints the next day, and we see a lot of sell prints, and we know that there's a big guy selling a lot at the top, and I've spotted and called a lot of corrections. On Twitter, I've taken a lot of pictures of them, and I teach my students how to trade around these late prints to put it back in our advantage.
How do you get that information then the next day? Where does it come in through?
I use the Charles Schwab block trade indicator, and it shows me all the block trades. It's amazing. I keep it on my screen all day long.
And so I guess for the retail investor out there, if you think that the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ is the only places that these stocks are being traded, in fact, it's just not true. We see that through high-frequency trading. We see that through dark pools.
And they're on the ECN books, too. You really don't know who's doing what anymore. Years ago, when I first started, we would see Goldman Sachs.
So what do regulators need to do, if anything?
Well, I don't know. I can't tell them how to do their job.
Well,
I don't feel like they're doing enough. I think they're starting to make a difference and crack down, but I don't think an $800,000 fine on Goldman Sachs.
Obviously, you know, they make that before breakfast in the morning.
You know, are they scaring people? Or, you know, I don't know. You can't change the world.
Stefanie Kammerman, thank you so much, the Stock Whisperer.
Thank you for having me.
Time now for the business ticker stories making headlines across the nation. It's been 50 years since President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the 1964 Civil Rights Act, a significant piece of legislation that greatly changed the landscape for racial, religious, and gender equality in the workplace. Despite the great progress since the law's inception, experts say there is still much work to be done. And tomorrow on Arise Exchange, we will explore the significance of the Civil Rights Act, especially as it applies to businesses. The head of the nation's largest bank has been diagnosed with throat cancer. Jamie Dimon, the chief executive and chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase, says the cancer is curable and that he will soon begin radiation and chemo treatment for the next 8 weeks. Dimon also says he will be able to continue to be actively involved in the bank's business and to run the company as normal. And Burger King is selling a gay pride burger. The Proud Whopper, as it's called, comes in a rainbow-colored wrapper with the inscription, "We are all the same" inside. The limited edition burger was added to the menu at a Burger King franchise in San Francisco to coincide with the city's annual Gay Pride Parade last weekend and to bring its new Be Your Way campaign to life. The Proud Whopper will only be available at the San Francisco location through tomorrow. No plans as of yet to broaden the promotion to the rest of the country. With the July 4th holiday approaching, many Americans are thinking red, white, and blue for their investments. But can you really discern American companies from foreign companies in this age of globalization when considering how to invest your money? And should you? Joining us by phone now is Tim Ghirskey, Chief Investment Officer at the Solaris Group. Tim, welcome back to Rise Exchange. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
If I want to invest in an American company, what is that called and where do I start?
That's a good question. Obviously, there are a lot of companies that are based in America, headquartered in America, trade on the various American stock exchanges. But are they really American when they produce the goods and services overseas? And a lot of them actually sell most of their goods and services overseas. Coca-Cola is such an American brand, and yet most of its earnings come from overseas sales and not from domestic sales. And that's just one example.
And if we wanted to be patriotic and invest in only companies that either repatriate all of the money to the U.S. or earn all of their money in the U.S., we really wouldn't be holding many stock investments at all, would we?
Well, you'd really be forced into small companies because they're really probably the only ones that aren't no longer global companies. Now, if you do look globally, probably Hollywood, the movie industry, is one of the great American exports. And I think it's what America is really known for in a lot of overseas countries.
What about the U.S. automakers? Because that still sounds like a brand being made here in the United States, or more so now.
Absolutely. I think the U.S. auto companies are a great example of the American brand. They really stand for American. They're known as American globally. Obviously, they're sold globally, and some are produced overseas, including in Canada and in Mexico, and then imported into the U.S. But a lot of the autos are made in the U.S. Obviously, they're designed here as well. And also, if you look beyond that into the tech industry, the internet industry, the social media industry, many software companies, these are all really U.S.-produced goods and services that are obviously sold globally, but really made here.
And we're looking at some video of Microsoft tech companies as well. We lead the world in tech companies, even though Apple keeps most of its cash offshore.
Right, and also Apple has a lot of parts of its machines produced overseas, of course.
Should we be looking, if people want to invest in patriotic companies, should they be looking at more companies that sort of, meet American ideals? Fair labor, fair wages, fair treatment of people, and supporting the causes an individual may want to support instead of looking at specifically a border issue?
I think that probably makes a lot of sense. Social investing, I think, is on the rise. Everybody defines it somewhat differently, but certainly using U.S. ideals and living by them, companies that do that, really, I think, are a great way to invest if that's important to you.
And do you see social investing as effective in getting companies to change the way they do business?
Oh, not really. In most cases, there are some companies that I think do make a real effort at being socially responsible, but most are really in it for shareholders, and it's not their job to be socially responsible. They don't feel at this point.
Their job is to make money for shareholders, of course. Tim Ghirskey, Chief Investment Officer at the Solaris Group. Have a good 4th of July weekend.
Happy 4th.
Coming up, forgetting to log off social media after committing a crime. And that makes one person our favorite person of the day when we come back.
One of the great things about Arise News, it is truly a multicultural global channel that is paying attention to communities of all different kinds, not just here in the United States, not just in Africa, but all around the world. As we're giving a voice to the people that don't traditionally have the kind of a voice that a mass media organization can have. You're getting here at Arise News that you're not going to find at the other networks is a unique perspective, and I think that's part of what Arise is here to do.
Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. And if you come to Arise and you watch our broadcast, these are the things we're going to bring to you every day, 24 hours a day.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. There are times when it is inappropriate and downright stupid to sign on to your Facebook page. While you're robbing someone's house is one of those times. Police say 26-year-old Nicholas Wigg broke into a home in Minnesota and stole the usual mix of cash, credit cards, and jewelry. But he had a little time on his hands and thought he'd check out what was happening on his Facebook page. So he used the homeowner's computer to log on to his account and then forgot to log off. When the homeowner returned, he found the thief's Facebook profile right on the computer. But he didn't just call the cops. He left Wigg a Facebook message. So Wigg, never too bright to begin with, said, "I'll bring all the stuff back to you at your home." And that's when the cops nabbed him. No word on whether he used Facebook to check in at the jail. And so Nicholas Wigg is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, a shot Tim Howard may want to let in. Big sponsorship deals could await the superstar keeper. For watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
He's being called soccer's newest star after a stellar performance in the United States gut-wrenching loss to Belgium. And despite the loss, keeper Tim Howard, who made 16 saves, is now the talk of the entire nation and could reap a whole lot of cash from endorsements because of his play yesterday. Dan Courtemanche is the Executive Vice President of Major League Soccer and is back here on Arise Xchange. Dan, welcome home. Welcome back.
Great to be here.
Welcome home. I want to start, actually, before we talk about Tim, I want to talk about an article from David Kahn, who is a former general manager in the NBA, who says that what Tim Howard represented a little bit is a challenge to the MLS because he's going to go back to the Premier League. And Americans may expect to turn on and watch MLS and see that level of quality play. Your response to his article?
Well, look, we're fortunate 10 players from that U.S. World Cup team play in Major League Soccer. So Clint Dempsey, who had a couple goals down in Brazil, handful of other guys. Starting this weekend, we'll be back in Major League Soccer. Tim Howard, excellent player, plays over in England. We've got a lot of top-quality players in the United States and more to come. Just signed a Brazilian player, Kaká, and a Spanish player, David Villa.
And you're drawing about 18,000 fans to the arena, so clearly you're filling the arenas. Is there going to be competition, though, because now NBC, for example, signed the Premier League to a television contract? Are people watching players, or do you think that the MLS is starting to get people to watch teams?
You know, soccer is really a tribal sport, and they follow clubs the most. Players keep fans on the edge of their seats, though. Sure. And with NBC, it's actually a compliment to us because they'll show those games in the morning on the NBC Sports Network, and they'll promote the MLS games that come later that afternoon or evening.
Okay, so what is next for Tim Howard?
Well, I tell you, first and foremost, as everybody saw, he's a fabulous athlete. But more importantly, he's a tremendous guy. He's articulate. Have you seen the interviews that he's done? He's a fabulous individual, and I think opportunities are going to come.
He has a tremendous backstory, too, doesn't he?
Yeah, in around 2001, he came out publicly and said he had Tourette syndrome, something that was diagnosed in middle school, but he didn't let anybody know about it. And he's now very, very active with Tourette syndrome and his foundation that he has.
All sports leagues, in many ways, sort of come of age because of superstar players, don't they? You need the Tim Howards. You need these nice guys to really build the league.
Most definitely. It's a combination of guys like Tim Howard and also young guys. A guy like DeAndre Yedlin, 20-year-old player who came in and played the last 2 games in the World Cup. Out of Seattle, came through their academy, and now is a starter on their team, an MLS All-Star. That's the future that we're looking at. Tim Howard, excellent. He's in his mid-30s. He's only got a few years left.
And, of course, if you're a professional athlete, you get some money from playing the sport. But, of course, sponsorship deals and endorsements, the biggest part of any major league franchise these days. That has not translated yet here in the U.S. for soccer stars. Is Tim Howard's future pretty bright here? At least, certainly in the short term, I would think he's getting calls today.
Sure. Well, there are a number of players who have 7-figure-plus deals. Tim Howard is one of those guys who I'm sure is up there. He's represented by Wasserman Media Group, one of the most powerful sports management agencies in the world.
But have we seen some of that sponsorship here in the U.S.? Americans haven't seen that, have we?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Michael Bradley, Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, a handful of players, certainly. And I expect Tim's going to have much more opportunities due to his performance.
What is, how does the MLS do so far this year? Because it's been playing at the same time the World Cup is going on. Have you seen the spillover effect into the league?
Well, we will. We took the first 2 weeks of the World Cup off, so we just started play back up. In 2010, 7 out of our 10 top-rated broadcasts on ESPN were after the World Cup. Our attendance went up, so we certainly expect to see a spike and continue that momentum.
And, you want to continue the momentum, but I imagine, and we said this last time I went, when you see all of these people in the bars, how are you're comfortable you're going to capture many of those people and stay in the league?
We're certainly going to capture some of them, but we have to remember the World Cup's like the Super Bowl, which attracts 100 million people. The NFL regular season, which is incredible, attracts 17 million people, so clearly there's a delta there. And we want to bring, the water level of soccer increased. And MLS is a boat on that sea or ship.
Well, I would think so, because as interest comes in, sort of all boats rise in this tide.
Most definitely.
And you don't want to wait for another 4 years for the World Cup again.
No question.
You're here every year. Okay, Dan, thank you so much for coming back.
Good to be here.
All eyes will be on the monthly jobs report tomorrow instead of Friday in honor of the Independence Day, so we will have those numbers for you. Let's take a look at the markets once again. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing at a record high, very light volume on the day, the same with the S&P 500. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Rise Exchange. We will see you here on Thursday.